Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. My name is, of course, the Battle Room, and today I am joined by my good friend Raghav. How you doing, buddy?
Honestly, Colin, it's been a ride this week. Let's just say I found a book. We'll call it the Death Note, and I was visited by the Shinigami. All right, and as you know, if you've seen the show, the boy loves apples. All right, so let's just say in my room, dude, they are piling up. I've just got a stack of apple cores, and I'm here to share that with you today because today we have the best cores in Pokemon Champions right now.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about these Champions cores. Obviously, this is in context going into the World Championships, which is going to be taking place a week and 1 day from this video. So that is very hype. We're both going to be competing. And we wanted to talk about some cores because I feel like this meta has really established itself. And it is firmly cemented on what the best teams and cores are. So today we're going to break down what we think are some of the best cores in all of Champions, like you said.
Yeah, I feel like exactly what you said, honestly. The meta has settled quite a bit. There has been some innovation, which is why we're going to update you on the hot and upcoming teams right now. But I feel like this video really covers a lot of the metagame's breadth. Like, I feel like these are, if you know these, then you've accounted for 99% of the top teams already.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's begin the core breakdown. Just working on my core, trying to have the strongest core imaginable. I hope you enjoy these Pokemon cores while I work on my core in my giant mansion here with my gold-plated dumbbells over there. But thank you for watching. Please also consider subscribing. It helps out my core. Enjoy the cores. So the first core we have to talk about right now is what I think might be the most dominant team going to Worlds. I think this core or idea might pass up Big Six, dare I say, and that is of course going to be Charizard, Venusaur, Incin, and Toxapex. We'll talk about Toxapex. It doesn't necessarily have to be Toxapex, but yeah, the first three for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy to say it's bigger than Big Six, but I do agree with you that it has a lot of strength, a lot of usage, and it's been proving it because it's showing up at the top of these online tournaments, and there's a reason why. So first off, of course, you have this Charizard, and Charizard is very interesting here because it always has Heat Wave and Weather Ball, but this set is running Ancient Power, and this is solely for beating opposing Charizard because beating Charizard is one of the most important things in the format. So especially on these teams where you have Venusaur next to you, you can forego that grass coverage of Solar Beam, rely on Venusaur for things like Basculegion, and instead run Ancient Power to help break the mirror. And Venusaur is such a good partner for Charizard because in the sun it obviously gets the chlorophyll boost. And if we look at Venusaur's set here, you'll also notice that a lot of the time they are running an offensive Venusaur. Of course you can still go the Sleep Powder route, but Life Orb just seems to be really prominent because it does so much damage.
I think too the other part is that like Sleep Powder, you do usually have to give up one of the coverage moves, and they're just too greedy for them, right? Leaf Storm's super important, and so is Sludge Bomb and Earth Power. Sludge Bomb obviously is a great move in this format. There are almost none. Like I don't think there's a poison type that's like really dominant besides Venusaur. So this is kind of where Sneasler, yeah. So this is where you're getting that coverage from, and then ground coverage is always very well appreciated, especially paired with that fire type coverage as well. So I think that pairing these two together is a match made in heaven, and then you kind of need some defensive backbone to keep these guys alive and to keep them dealing their big damage. So naturally Incineroar comes to mind. Offensively he works with Charizard. In the sun he can do a little bit more damage, but then defensively obviously as well. They surprisingly have really great synergy outside of rock typing or rock attacks for two fire types.
Yeah, and Incin's ability to click Fake Out and Parting Shot is really nice for Venusaur and Charizard, where you're wanting to maintain weather control. If you're running the Sleep Powder set, it also gives you, options to click Fake Out Sleep Powder. I do want to say I think the Sleep Powder set is very viable on this. It's something I was testing a lot. But Incineroar also helps so much if you are running the Toxapex variant on this core. Toxapex is a very strong Pokemon, as we've seen post NAIC and Wolf's top 4 finish. It is able to just slowly whittle down your opponent, there it is, with Infestation, trap them in, and also just slam that Toxic on top of it. It is so bulky too, like it appreciates Incin for intimidating Guard Chomp, clicking Fake Out to stall more turns, Parting Shot with its Regenerator. The synergy here is just so nice, and it also works well with Charizard and Venusaur. Because it gets Wide Guard, it can protect Charizard, and these Pokemon honestly don't love Basculegion, but that's where Venusaur's Leaf Storm in the sun is so nice because it's able to outspeed in Tailwind and kill it. And then, of course, Incineroar, dude, he's just the GOAT.
He is, yeah. And the thing is, too, we actually saw recently at this tournament that just took place 2 weekends ago, or last weekend, sorry, in Japan. The winner had a Aerodactyl over the Tox specs. So you don't necessarily need this Pokemon, but these three alone are very powerful, and the Tox specs team will be making a splash at Worlds. There's just a ton of offensive, defensive synergy that the team just provides. And I think another one small note is that having that Life Orb Venusaur makes it a little bit easier to switch around defensively because you don't have to worry about breaking that Focus Sash. And speaking of Big Six, here is the Big Six core that has been dominating the game. But I feel like these four are the most important part of Big Six. Obviously, Floette's super important, so is Kingambit. But those are commonly the two Pokemon that you'll see shifted around, whether it's for another Mega like Staraptor or for another Dark type like Incineroar. These four, though, usually remain, just ironclad. They're just some of the best Pokemon that you can use in the entire game.
Yeah, these are the non-negotiables, and again, it just makes a lot of sense. Charizard, just the strongest Mega in the game, those powerful Heat Waves, Weather Ball. Usually you're going to see Solar Beam. There is some uptick in Ancient Power again for the Charizard Mirror, but generally you will see Solar Beam because hitting opposing Basculegion is just so good. And it works so nicely with Whimsicott. Whimsicott has absolutely taken over the format the last few months because that priority speed control is just incredible. Being able to Tailwind before Aerodactyl, before pretty much anything else is so good. The Moonblast coverage, being able to hit Garchomp, and then lastly, Encore. I mean, we all know, all of us have gotten in some sticky Encore situations where we just auto-lose the game, or on the contrary, we just win the game and feel like gods. And then next up we have Basculegion. What can you tell me about Basculegion, Colin?
I could tell you that he's just simply one of the best Pokemon in the game. I feel like he's gotten, I don't want to say worse, but like there is a little bit more diversity. You're not seeing him on every single team anymore. His usage has dropped a little bit. But at the same time, he's still amazing, right? Pokemon are going to faint in your game, and that just makes him stronger. No matter the situation, Pokemon have to faint. So he gets stronger with last respects. Obviously, the Life Orb was a pretty strong buff for him as well. He just got a little bit better. He doesn't really care about recoil. He just wants to hit you with really, really strong hits. And Life Orb lets him do that. If you thought you could live a last respects before Life Orb, you probably couldn't, but now with the Life Orb, it's just a guaranteed KO onto almost anything that isn't immune or heavily resisted and bulky like Kingambit, right? He does a ton of damage. He's very, very flexible. You can lead him, break open a team with him, or you can bring him in the back and clean up. He is very versatile, and he just does a lot of damage. And then finally, Garchomp is almost always paired with these teams. One note really quick about both these Pokemon is that you don't have to run Life Orb Basculation. You can run Mystic Water. You can run
Choice Scarf sometimes. It's not as common, but I have seen it.
But usually it's going to be one of those two boosting items, and sometimes on Garchomp you can run Life Orb instead of the Citrus. You could also run
Roselli Berry, but usually it's going to be Citrus or Life Orb. I feel like Roselli is more common on ladder, like in best of one context, but when it comes to the best of three tournaments, we almost always see Citrus or Life Orb.
Yeah, and that Citrus set has been popping up more and more. It just kind of allows him to stay on the field longer. He's very hard to KO. He's a really, really great pivot as well on these types of teams because he can just take almost any hit. It also lets you trade well with the other Garchomps because you live their Dragon Claw, give them the Rough Skin damage, give them the Life Orb tick, and then you heal up so you can survive their Rough Skin. It's a very cool interaction that allows you to potentially KO them back with your own Dragon Claw, even though you are slower. Which has gotten quite popular. Obviously, Earthquake, Rock Slide are just great moves.
Yeah, you almost always are going to see Garchomp next to Charizard. Even in our last core, you usually round that team out with a Garchomp. His synergy is just phenomenal with Charizard. There's not that much more to say. Fire Ground coverage is awesome. And just going back to what we said initially, usually this is rounded out with Floette Kingambit, but we also see Incineroar, we see Staraptor, but these are the core four that you absolutely must have, and they're so dominant for a reason.
The next core we want to talk about is, of course, Staraptor. Staraptor has really cemented itself as a top-tier Mega, if not maybe the number 3 or 4 most viable Mega. It's done really, really well. We've seen it just continue to get more and more success, and I wouldn't be surprised if it made a very deep run or even won Worlds. And one of the cores that has really helped to do that is this very offensive Tailwind plus a Tailwind Staraptor plus sweepers kind of core, right? You pair him with stuff like Kingambit and Arcanine, and it can go absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I think Staraptor's rise is really fascinating to me. Initially, people were trying to make it more like a very stally, bulky, like Staraptor's going to be unkillable. But now we're seeing the rise of these Tailwind sets, or just more offensive teams, and it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes all you need is just that close combat with the contrary ability to get you boosted, and you're still dealing an absurd amount of damage. King Gambit as a partner makes a lot of sense because it helps into things like Basculegion, but also a lot of people are very tempted to intimidate Staraptor before it mega evolves, because that's the only way you're going to be able to reduce its damage without something like a light screen, or sorry, not light screen, a reflect. And so King Gambit is a very natural partner. It also fits in well in like the broader scheme of these teams, but on the core, it's really awesome because Staraptor's taking all this attention. You're often able to click Swords Dance. Sometimes they have coverage moves in Iron Head, and it's able to move really fast in Tailwind, providing a lot. But I think the most important partner and the most interesting, I guess, addition to the team is this Arcanine Hisui.
Yeah, Arcanine is just basically a nuke, right? He's gained a little bit of traction in the last format. We saw some people go very, very deep at tournaments, including getting top 4 at the first tournament of the format. But then he kind of disappeared for a little bit, and now he's back in full swing. The Rockhead set is just so powerful, right? For those who do not know, this ability does remove the recoil from your moves, so it just lets you run moves like Head Smash, which is a base 150 rock move, right? You're chunking anything that resists, you're just doing a ton of damage. It's a hyper beam, right? It's just absolutely nuts. The only real downside is that you can miss, which is unfortunate. But the Staraptor Arcanine lead is just so potent because, especially once Staraptor is able to Mega Evolve, Intimidate's hard to bring in versus this guy, and then Staraptor is just continuously spamming CCs or enabling even more speed for Arcanine with that Tailwind, because Staraptor's speed is actually faster than Floette and Garchomp, so you're able to set up Tailwinds for your other guys. It reminds me very much of like Mega Salamence in the in formats past.
Yeah, oh my god, if we had Mega Salamence, I would be so happy. But Staraptor, unlike Salamence, is actually very strong in a King Gambit as well. So even if you happen to give it a boost to its Defiant, you're able to close combat it. I think Arcanine just helps into a lot of these Charizard teams. It gives it so much trouble, especially next to Tailwind Staraptor, because then you're able to outspeed things like Venusaur and just overall keep your foot on the gas.
The next Staraptor core we wanted to talk about more involved the other type of Staraptor, right? Like the other Staraptor was like, hey, I'm here to help the team. I got Tailwind, life's good. But this one is selfish and greedy and wants all the attention for himself while also still, enabling the team with the contrary ability, right? Like being able to deter, intimidate a little bit. And this is with Staraptor and Whimsicott. Now, this Staraptor is going to be the same type of Staraptor. Usually you train it something like this, and that's all you really need. But on this team, you do have access to Charm, specifically on Whimsicott, to help push that Staraptor damage even more off the charts.
Yeah, and you're able to run Roost to, keep that sustain even longer. Staraptor is boosting up with its close combat. You might be taking damage, but you're just going to Roost it all off. And Whimsicott is actually very helpful because now that Staraptor has Roost, it doesn't have Tailwind, you get that speed control, you have those charms, and very interestingly, initially we saw Light Screen, but now they're switching back to Encore, and I think Encore is way scarier. I feel like that's most of Whimsicott's fear is being, getting Encore trapped. And this Whimsicott also has a very funky item in Occaberry. You can obviously run Focus Sash depending on the rest of your team, but in this context, it makes a lot of sense because the last Pokemon is going to be Glimmora with the Focus Sash. Having Glimmora, not be a Mega Pokemon, instead have the Focus Sash, makes it a lot more bringable with Staraptor, and it solves a lot of Staraptor's problems. The main problem for Staraptor is Floette, is those Fairy types, and Glimmora is able to do so much in the early game versus that. You're able to lead like Whimsicott Glimmora into Charizard, into Floette. In general, just having Focus Sash on such a strong attacker opens up a lot of holes where maybe they don't have the tools anymore to kill Staraptor.
I think another really cool thing about Glimmora is Toxic Debris. The metagame is still primarily physical. Obviously, special attacking Megas are very good, and that's usually what you're going to see, but everything else usually is hitting with physical moves, which means we're proccing Toxic Debris more and more, and Staraptor is a good Pokemon at stalling. Funnily enough, it loves a
Yeah.
long, drawn out game with that roost specifically and the CC boost it gets from the contrary ability. So it kind of just ends up being like a really, really good pairing just because you are spreading toxic debris, you're stalling with roost, and then you just can pick them off when you can after they've taken enough poison damage. The next core I want to talk about is one of my personal favorites, and that involves Trick Room. Trick Room is a move that's always been very, very good. It's won worlds countless amount of times. It's just a very strong, consistent move. It lets the slower Pokemon move first. It makes a lot of sense. It allows you to kind of cheat with your EV spreads and rely on slower, stronger Pokemon, right? But Trick Room in Pokemon Champions just hasn't been very good. It's just kind of mid, and Farigiraf is kind of the only Pokemon that is able to pull it off.
Yeah, I think this really, I guess, blew up around NAIC again on the team that got second. Obviously, the team you and Alex brought as well. I think it just makes a lot of sense as the primary Trick Room user in the format. It's not a hard Trick Room team usually. There are other options on the team, and having that mode is just so nice for its partners in Sylveon and King Gambit. You don't need Pokemon like Torkoal, although you can run them, of course. These two alone are enough to sweep in Trick Room. And it makes a lot of sense because there's flexibility of like, do you want Aerodactyl as your Mega? Do you want Charizard as your Mega? Regardless, Sylveon and King Gambit are just perfect partners.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you talked about those two, but also the Staraptor team that we're seeing a lot of does run this core
Yeah.
as well. So sometimes you just rely on Staraptor's Tailwind. And I think that's the strength, like you mentioned, like Sylveon is able to function so perfectly with its low speed stat that in Trick Room it can really shine, but also in Tailwind it can even outspeed stuff like Jolly Sneasler. So it can really just catch your opponents off guard depending on what their speed control is. And not a lot of Pokemon are running stuff like Taunt to shut down Farigiraf or Roar. It is really just surviving the turns of Trick Room.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sylveon, primary spread type, spread attacker, has that hyper voice, really good into things like Garchomp, generally just does so much damage onto neutral targets. Hyper Beam is such a good nuke. I honestly compare it to Light of Ruin from Floette all the time, just because it is so strong with that Fairy Feather. I think on these Trick Room teams, you're generally going for Hyper Beam over something like Yawn, because you want to do as much damage as possible. And lastly, when it comes to King Gambit, I feel like a lot of the time you do run this Focus Sash set, you're guaranteed to get at least one hit off. Sometimes you just lead it with Farigiraf because the damage is so hard to stop. It has Defiant, you can't intimidate it. It just trades really well and sets up for the end game.
I think as well, you don't have to run this set. Like, you could run a Life Orb King Gambit as well. You could run Choppleberry.
Yeah.
You have other options. This is just one that really shines with Farigiraf specifically. But we see on the Staraptor team, for example, they do run Life Orb because they have Fake Out and other tools to enable the King Gambit to sweep. But yeah, it's really like these three do just make such a good core. King Gambit and Sylveon, like you mentioned, have perfect speeds for both Trick Room and Tailwind. So this core just refuses to die. We saw it do really, really well at the first regional of the year. It was a very strong core, first tournament of Pokemon Champions. But then as time went on, you would say, oh, it's probably going to be bad. Like Regulation MB, we got new threats to it. It's falling off. But for some reason, every single online tournament, and I expect at Worlds as well, this team will always find itself in top 8. It has a dedicated fan base using it. Someone's always picking it up and trying it, and it always continuously does well.
I was gonna say the same thing. There's a dedicated group of soldiers with this team who refuse to give up on it because it's never reached Big Six heights. It's never been the most popular team in the format. Maybe for a week when the MA started.
Yeah.
But it just sticks around. It's persistent, and again, I say this a lot, but it makes sense because there are so many tools, especially, with the innovation of the Lycanroc version. I feel like that's the version that is really sticking around.
Mm-hmm.
But this 3-1 core is something we recognized very early as being very strong. Obviously, it starts with Froslass, it has Blizzard, Shadow Ball, and Aurora Veil. Sometimes we see another move in Aurora Veil's place. We've seen Thunderbolt, we've seen Weather Ball with our friend Michael Zhang, but you always generally see Blizzard and Shadow Ball. Froslass, really good. With Veil, you're able to reduce damage, but also it's just so nice to have some form of weather control, and obviously a nuke on Garchomp. Shadow Ball's coverage is also really nice in things like Basculegion, and just being able to hit fire types, things that, resist Blizzard. But his real best friend is Sneasler. Sneasler has Fake Out, so you can set up Aurora Veil. It has Close Combat for annoying things like King Gambit, and it has the poison coverage. We're seeing a lot of Gunk Shot for a while now, just so you're able to actually nuke that Floette.
Yeah, and then to round it out, you do have King Gambit, who appreciates both of the other Pokemon, right? His main goal is usually to set up Swords Dances, try to sweep the enemy team, and to do that, he has Aurora Veil. He does have Fake Out as well. These three are just such huge threats, and the three of them alone create this sort of lead roulette, like, do I want to stop Froslass or do I want to stop King Gambit? Both of them require different Pokemon, different answers, and a lot of attention, because if you let the Aurora Veil go up for free, or you let King Gambit set up for free, it's just over. There's just nothing you can do. So I think this core is just so solid defensively and offensively. Obviously, the switches are just perfect. You think of a type that one of them is weak to, and one of the other two is ready to go in, right? You think of fighting, we have Froslass. Psychic, we have King Gambit. They're just so perfect for each other, and they are probably going to continue to do well at these tournaments as time goes on. The next core I wanted to talk about is actually involving no Mega. It is simply just the setup squad. These Pokemon together can enable any setup Mega, no matter who it is, and just allow them to go nuts. You think mostly of Blastoise, Floette, and Delphox primarily, but I've even seen it with Staraptor and Golden Go, right? Like, these guys are just so good at enabling them, and they kind of deserve their own spotlight. I would say the primary two offenders here are going to be Incineroar and Sinistcha. They have really good typing defensively together, and they also provide a ton to help a Pokemon sweep.
Honestly, I think all four of them together as a package deal are just so important. They really are like the setup squad. They're the staple, because this Sneasler is running Quick Guard. It provides double Fake Out. Its offensive coverage is so nice for Mega Pokemons usually, and you're just able to click Fake Out Nasty Plot, Fake Out Calm Mind, Shell Smash, whatever it is that your Mega Pokemon's doing, and you're able to protect and swap into your other Fake Out bro, just to, be as safe as possible. Obviously, you mentioned Sinistcha plays a huge part in that too, providing Rage Powder and some healing. Trick Room is seen commonly on these teams. It isn't pressed very often, but the threat of it is so great that it's usually on these teams. And lastly, the one Pokemon we haven't covered is King Gambit, because on this team, you almost treat it like a second Mega Pokemon. You can often lead it with Sneasler or Incineroar, but I think a lot of the way people play these teams is they have their Mega with the support Pokemon, and then King Gambit comes in after you lose your first, protect the president. Now it's King Gambit's turn to do the same exact thing with Swords Dance, because the rest of the team is just so perfectly supportive.
And as well, you don't have to use all these Pokemon together, but you will commonly see like one of the Fake Out users potentially subbed out, or even the King Gambit if they're trying to focus on something else. But it's a really good package, right? It gives you any Pokemon you want to set up, they can succeed doing it. One thing to note. Oh, sorry,
go on.
One thing to note too is like you were gonna say, there's slight variations, right? Like this is Akaberry, but you can totally run Berry or Culver Berry if that is your weakness, right? If you're afraid of Basculation or King Gambit, it really depends on your Mega and how you want to support them.
Yeah, we've seen Citrus Berry too. Incineroar can run Helping Hand. Sneasler's run Coaching. There are minor adjustments you can make depending on your team, and I think that's part of the strength of the core, is that even the Pokemon, not even these exact sets, are just so good that like you usually want them together to support your big setup Pokemon.
Next up here, I wanted to cover a Gengar core just because I think Gengar is starting to gain some traction going into the World Championship. We saw it win a huge tournament with Michael Urbesti, and then we also saw it perform very, very well most recently in the $6,000 Victory Road tournament with a very, very similar core. So I wanted to touch, obviously there's the Perish Song Gengar core, but this one is also just an offensive Gengar core that's just been working really, really well.
Yeah, this is actually not a Perish Song team, despite what the moveset says. It should be Protect. And yeah, I think Michael might have... Well, he didn't invent it. This has been around since Regulation MA, but he's really brought it back to the spotlight, and I think it perfectly suits a player like that. This is not an easy core to use, but it gives you so much control. You're in the driver's seat, and you're putting on a lot of pressure, creating a lot of volatile situations. Gengar obviously has the Shadow Tag ability. I think this moveset's cool because you're able to set up Substitute. Found out, funnily, when I was testing Toxapex, that Substitute actually erases the trapping of Infestation and the recoil, not recoil, but the passive damage it takes. So that's really nice, but oftentimes you just want Substitute so Gengar like maintains the trap a turn longer, right? It's able to punish the opponent's passive plays, and its coverage is phenomenal into Floette, into Basculegion, and even if you're hitting something neutrally, you're probably doing a lot of damage with Sludge Bomb and potentially getting a poison.
Yeah, and then obviously Gengar's best friend is Incineroar. Incineroar is just so potent, especially with Gengar, because you can set up guaranteed fake out pins, or you can just set up, you know, really good substitutes as well. Intimidate also, they're trapped in, so you can't switch out to remove that. He's kind of boring, but he is just so potent. Another thing he can do, I should mention, the best thing he can do is that he has Parting Shot, so he can actually reposition and bring in a threat who is now trapped by the shadow tag. So if Garchomp's in there, you say, hey Gengar, I'll be right back, I'm gonna Parting Shot, bring in Ninetales, and now you have a pin set up to just one-shot Garchomp, and there's nothing they can do because they can't switch out. So he just sets up a lot of really good pins that you have to be very careful of.
Also nice being able to just use him to bring Gengar back in. That's more commonly seen on Perish Song, but this is equally as important on, you know, any Gengar team. And next up, we have to talk about, I think, the two most important damage dealers on this team, the really unique ones too. First up is this Life Orb Dragonite with Inner Focus. We have seen Dragon Fang Dragonite on Gengar teams. Life Orb is just a progression from that. You're doing more damage with every single one of your moves. Dragon Claw is just an insanely good neutral attack into 90% of the format. It's doing like 80% to Basculegion, it's doing 80% to Charizard. It's just chunking everything. Obviously it one-shots Garchomp, and if there's a little bit of HP left, that's where E-Speed comes in to clean up. Superpower is primarily for Incineroar and King Gambit, and if you're able to trap one of those in, who are both super dangerous for Gengar, you're able to just Superpower, take a KO, and you're feeling really good. I think this Dragonite is super awesome with Gengar, particularly gives it such a good matchup into these Charizard Toxapex teams because they can't really do that much to Dragonite. You can't fake it out, you can't intimidate it, and if you set up a weather or position in your Garchomp, guess who's waiting for you? The final Pokemon in this core, Ninetales.
Ninetales is so sick. It's actually going to be timid nature usually as well, just because it needs that extra speed boost to outspeed stuff like Scarf Garchomp, get that guaranteed Blizzard KO. Also, just changing the weather is very important for Gengar. He can't change the weather, and weather is very dominant in Pokemon Champions, so being able to shut down Politoed, I don't know why that was the first one that came out of my mind. Being able to shut down Charizard, Tyranitar, or even Pelipper can be very valuable. Also, Freeze Dry has incredible value in this format. Very good into Basculegion, Swampert, Pelipper. It gives you a very potent and solid rain matchup. And also, again, that single target ice move can be used to snipe stuff like Garchomp. Icy Wind is very valuable as well. Oh yeah, Toxapex, yeah. It's just such a good move in this format. Icy Wind gives you a little bit of extra speed control as well for Gengar, who is very fast, but now he can move as fast as a Scarf Ninetales, right? And then Encore is the final move, just because it usually allows it to just create pins if it needs to. It's very threatening. You still have to respect it, even though it is a Scarf Pokemon who's clicking Encore.
Yeah, one thing I do want to mention, but going back to that timid nature, is it allows you to outspeed the opponent's Pokemon in Tailwind and things like Venusaur in the sun. It's still faster. You have to be very fast to actually outspeed Scarf Ninetales, so you're often picking cheeky kills with Freeze Dry into Basculegion in Tailwind, or just Venusaurs, so this is a very cool adjustment to Ninetales. Before, we've seen like Nevermelt Ice and Focus Sash, but Michael really, you know, he sold me with the Scarf Ninetales.
Next up here, we gotta talk about Rain. Rain is one of the more, I wouldn't even say it's underutilized weathers. It is still very potent. We do see a couple of those Sun Rain teams running around. It has a pretty dedicated fan base, and of course, Swampert Rain as well. But the Rain teams and what allows them to shine specifically in Regulation MB is this core 3 of Pelipper, Archaludon, and Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, so if you don't know what they do, Pelipper is obviously setting up the Rain. It's usually a very bulky set with Citrus Berry, Dual Stab with Hurricane and Weather Ball, and always runs Tailwind for speed control. And Wide Guard is just useful in the format with things like Heat Wave, Rock Slide, Earthquake, Dazzling Gleam. So you can choose whether to have Wide Guard or Protect, but more than not, we are seeing Pelipper's just run these 4 attacks because it is so good, and it is just primarily a utility Pokemon. Archaludon is obviously the main rain sweeper. In the rain, it has that Electro Shot, very strong electric type move that boosts its special attack, and Archaludon just stays on the field. It doesn't need the Assault Vest like we all thought it did. It can just run leftovers, stack up those stamina boosts, and do a lot of damage. You have Dragon Pulse and Flash Cannon for coverage, but if you were thinking, hey, this is still a little too frail, how are we going to position around Charizard, Mega Evolving, and just setting up the Sun? That's what Grimmsnarl is there to do, Colin.
Grimmsnarl is the most important part of the team. We saw rain teams do okay with Sableye in the first regulation, but like you said, Charizard was a huge problem because Mega Evolution will go after the rain is set up, so he can guarantee set up the Sun. But what Grimmsnarl is able to do with Parting Shot is actually Parting Shot after the Sun is set up, he switches into Pelipper, and boom, now we have the rain. It's very, very cool and just can set up some guaranteed rain setups, and it was something that rain desperately needed to survive in this current format. So he's very, very simple. He puts up the screens, which I think Archaludon also really loves. I think Archaludon did succeed a lot in the early regulations with the screen Sableye, but now we have a better version of Sableye. Grimmsnarl is able to do that, gives you Spirit Break as well, which is just a great, great utility move, and then of course the before mentioned Parting Shot to guarantee the weather.
Yeah, it's just a really solid core, and you can round it out in a number of ways. We've seen, obviously, the Sunrain team with Charizard, Venusaur, Basculegion, or Swampert. You can go more dedicated Swampert team. We've seen Mega Venusaur. Regardless, these 3 work so well, and they're happy to make friends with other cores too, just because they are just such a what's the word, concise package that they do what they do no matter what.
And then the final core I wanted to talk about is Raichu and Kingambit. They're very, very splashable, and they work on a multitude of teams. Obviously, we see them with stuff like Sylveon, Aerodactyl, Basculegion, Staraptor, Harknine. There's just so many different partners you can pair with them. But the main idea is that Raichu just provides so much utility with the Fake Out, and then it can set up really, really easy Swords dances with Kingambit. But at the same time, they also exert so much offensive pressure that if you're trying to stop the Fake Out Swords dance, you might just get hit with a Sucker Punch Zap Cannon.
Yeah, we just really wanted to shine a light on Raichu because it has been doing really well. It's usually on a dual mega team, like you said, with Staraptor or Aerodactyl, something like that. But these 2 together just work so well. It's like they're so splashable. You can plug and play, you know? You have Fake Out Swords Dance, or like you said, just immense offensive pressure, paralyzing the opponent, spreading speed control, and then Kingambit, just one of the deadliest Pokemon in the format. We've been knowing that.
Yeah, and so obviously the Raichu set is always going to just be Fake Out, Zap Cannon, Focus Blast. Usually Protect. Encore can sometimes sneak in there. We did see it get second at a tournament when they ran Encore, but it's mostly just about trying to have those consistent damage with Zap Cannon, the coverage that Focus Blast provides, and then the utility of Fake Out. And then again, Kingambit's just going to be this really standard setup set. It's not a very complex or crazy core, and it is very, very splashable. Which I think is why we need to talk about it, and it is something you'll probably see do well at Worlds. Now, going into Worlds, you can expect the multitude of these cores to do well, mix and match. Obviously, in my opinion, this format is all about comfort. So I wouldn't say there's like one core that's better than all the others. I think it depends on the player and the person. And at the World Championships, I think some people will vibe with certain ones and do really, really well, and you know, potentially win just because they are more comfortable with that core.
Absolutely, and I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. This covers a majority of the format, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Peace.